Welcome back to Biblio Files, a show from the Ann Arbor District Library that's all about books. Each episode we answer one book-related question, and I'm joined today by Lucy and Amanda. My name's Christopher, and this episode we're talking all about a book that has something to do with sports. So Amanda, what did you pick?
Okay, so when we did this topic, I didn't realize I had read so many books that I actually really liked that involved a sport. So I decided to grab one of my favorite young adult authors. And the first book I read by him that I really loved, it is called Winger. You can't see it, but it's called Winger, and it is by Andrew Smith. It is a teen novel. He writes a lot of teen fiction, and he's also written some youth books, youth fiction as well. This book is called Winger, and it was published in 2013, I believe. And the main character is Ryan Dean West. First name is Ryan Dean. And Ryan Dean West is a 14-year-old junior at an elite boarding school in the Pacific Northwest. And he is on a rugby team, and he is a winger. So some of the kids all of the kids on his team, they call him Winger instead of his name Winger. So he is the narrator of the story. He is 14. He is very driven by his 14-year-old male hormones. He likes girls. He likes talking about girls. The book talks about sports and sportsmanship and your teammates and your team. He is in this elite boarding school, but he is put in this dorm, what is it called, O-Hall, for kids who have gotten in trouble. So he's in there with the bad kids. So he pokes fun of himself for that, but he ends up in this dorm room. There's bullying involved. The book is hilarious. It's really, really funny to see, having this 14-year-old boy just narrate. It's probably not for everybody, but when I read this when it came out, I just really loved the author's style of writing. I loved reading this character. It was just really funny and truthful. I don't agree with all of the things that happen in the book. The ending is kind of rushed, but this is the first book I read by Andrew Smith, which really made me like his writing style. He also wrote the book I mentioned previously on here, Grasshopper Jungle. It is completely different than that book. It's not weird at all. It's just a straight-laced. It's a good read, like for folks who enjoy reading books by John Green. So Winger came out in 2013. Shortly after, there was a sequel called Standoff, and it also features Ryan Dean. He's now a senior, and so there's a sequel. There's also a couple of prequel youth novels. Those two are both teen. There's a couple of prequels. So in the second book, Standoff, Ryan Dean is in school, and there's a 12-year-old who is also a genius and smart. So he ends up in this class that's ahead of him. And so he's Ryan Dean's roommate is this 12-year-old, and who's just like the cutest, funny. He's just a really fun character. So there's a couple of books by Andrew Smith and that kid's name is Sam Abernathy. And so a couple of prequel novels are Sam Abernathy's life before he lands in the dorm room with Ryan Dean. You don't have to read all of these books. If you want to read any of them, I would even just, if you like reading youth novels, youth fiction, I would even just grab, what is it? I don't have the first one. What is it called? This one's called Bye Bye Blue Creek. Sam Abernathy. I forget the name of the first one. I would just read it's called, no, it's gone. Something about digging. Anyways, I would read one of the youth novels or just read Winger. They're all really great. I love Andrew Smith's writing. He's a really great writer. And the book is about sports. There is rugby. And Andrew Smith was a high school teacher. He taught advanced placement classes, and he was a rugby coach. So there's all kinds of like fun rugby facts and information throughout this book with Ryan Dean and some of his teammates. So there you are, a very long chit chat about Winger and Standoff, and then the two Sam Abernathy youth fiction novels. That's what I got. So sports or no sports, we've got rugby today. Lucy, what sport did you bring us?
So I was going to go something different. And then this was actually, Amanda, you put this idea in my head because you had mentioned this book and I had read it. And when you mentioned it, I was like, oh my God, yeah, I love that book. And I went back and I read it again in like a day. And I loved it even more. So it's Dragon Hoops by Jean Wen Yang, and it is a graphic novel, and it is a combination of a book, like I would say like a documentary about basketball and specifically this one high school team, and then sort of like an autobiography of the author trying to come up with a subject matter for his next book. So he starts off the book with like this premise. He's like, I don't like sports at all. Not interested. There's no intersection between my graphic novels and sports. Especially don't like basketball. But he's looking for material for his new book, and he starts talking to the basketball coach at the high school where he teaches. And in doing so, he starts to learn some of the history of the basketball team. And what's currently going on with the basketball team is they're vying for this championship that they've always been like kind of close to, but they don't get. And so he starts to sort of become invested in the team and the players. And so the book goes through, it will tell you about each one of the players and the coach and some of the history of the team and some of the history of basketball. And so it's this investigation of all of those pieces that sort of ties in these social, political aspects of the sport and its founding, and how race played into that and still plays into it. And there's so much humanity in this book. Like, you care about all the players on the team. He really does a great job just like introducing you to these people. And he continues to get more and more and more invested. In fact, it's taking up more time away from other projects, away from his family. He can't let a game go by without knowing everything about it and being there. And then the scenes with the game are so riveting. And I would say, whether or not you like basketball, like the author does an amazing job of just having you feel like you are at a basketball game, like on the edge of your seat, just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So there's like all this excitement and emotion in the games. And then, so it's entertaining in that way, but then it's also extremely moving, these stories of all these players on the team, and his own story about being the father of 4 children and being a teacher and writing graphic novels, and where's he gonna put his time and energy. So that's all in this book, which is, I don't know if it's a teen book or
it's teen.
youth. It's teen. It's definitely teen. Yeah. But I mean, it could be for adults as well. And then he does this really cool reoccurring motif of stepping. So he'll have characters or people in the book, like he finishes a little segment and there's actually like a drawing of a foot, like step. And it's always like they're taking a first step into a new school, a new team, a new way of playing, or for him, a new decision about what project he's going to do. And so it's sort of just building these steps towards project progress and self-discovery. And yeah, I mean, so that is all in this book. And the second time I was reading it, like, I couldn't stop talking about it to anyone who would walk into the room. And I was just like, did you know this amazing thing about basketball? Or it just like, I loved this book. I loved it so much. So when you brought it up, Amanda, I was like, no, that's the one I have to talk about. So that is,
I'm
Dragon
so
Hoops.
Brought it to the table because I was debating and I'd mentioned it, and I said, Lucy, I know I mentioned this one, but I'm not going to talk about it for sports if you wanted to. But I loved the book. I had the same reaction. I was like, why do I love this book? It's a graphic novel. It's a memoir. It's like 400 pages. It's about basketball. Why? Yeah. But I loved it. It's seriously one of my favorite graphic novels I've ever read. I just loved it. It was so well done. And I loved the motif of the stepping on to a new thing. Just really fantastic. Christopher, put it on your list.
Yeah, you definitely, I mean, everybody read it. It's amazing. So Christopher, what did you pick?
Well, I'm really not that interested in sports much at all. I never have been. So it was interesting to think what book I would pick for this. But I remembered reading a review of Andre Agassi's book, his memoir called Open, quite a few years ago. And the review talks about how much he absolutely hates the sport of tennis. And I thought, this sounds like an interesting sports book to read. So that's what I chose. And Andre Agassi says numerous times in every single chapter how much he hates tennis and how much he has always hated tennis. And it begins with his failing body, all the problems that he has physically, and then it goes into his childhood, the extremely difficult, even abusive relationship he has with his father. And then it details all of his successes and failures playing tennis. I never realized that tennis was such an intensive mental sport. Agassi talks about how it's truly the loneliest sport that there is, because you have an opponent that's quite distant from you, but other than that, you're alone out there playing. It's not a team sport at all, and you don't even get a coach or anyone in your corner like you do with boxing. So he details all the agonies of losing and what it's like to be out there with all of that pressure. It's utterly gripping from beginning to end, and he names names. It's very unsparing. He's also unsparing with himself. So it is just a fascinating look into someone's psychology, their upbringing, and their relationship with a sport. So I highly recommend it. I suppose it's maybe a little bit on the tawdry side because it is so emotional constantly, and it's so exciting. He details the matches that he's in, and even though I know nothing about tennis or sports, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see what's going to happen with this match, whether he'll win or lose. So that was my pick this time, Open by Andre Agassi. What we have coming up next is an episode on Asian American Pacific Islander books, and we'll have our picks for that. Please let us know what you like when you read a book about sports. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, happy reading.